Example 3, using completing the square when a is equal to 1. So let's go ahead and write this out. So a meaning that we have x squared minus 4x minus 14, which is equal to 0. Now, the leading coefficient is a 1, okay? Because it's a 1 and we divide every term by 1, it doesn't change anything in our problem. But we always need to make sure that 1 is in the leading coefficient, okay? Step number 2, what we're going to do is we're going to write this by keeping the variable terms on the left side of the equation and then bringing the constant term on the right side of the equation. So this is going to become x squared minus 4x. And then we're going to add 14 to both sides. So that means we're going to get 14 on this side. Okay. Now, in order to complete the square, what we're going to do is we're going to put a placeholder in here. And that placeholder is going to be c. We're just going to call it plus c over here. Now, if we add a value to the left side of the equation, we also have to add it to the right side of the equation. Okay. And so, how do we solve for c? Well, c is going to equal the following. You're going to take 1/2 of whatever the value of b is and then square it. Okay, now where does b come? Well, b, if you recall, is the middle term of a quadratic equation. In this case, it's -4. So that means we're going to take 1/2 of -4. And then once we take the half of the -4, then we're going to square it. So 1/2 of -4 is -2. And when we square that, we get +4. So we can see that the value of c is going to be 4. So now, in step number 3, we're now going to replace the value of c to be +4. So now x squared minus 4x plus 4. And on this side, this is going to be 14 plus 4. Because now we're replacing c to be the value of 4. Okay. Now, in the fourth step, what we need to do is we need to now factor this trinomial. Well, that's a perfect square trinomial. And the best way to know what we did is by squaring. What did we square to get +4? Well, we squared this -2. So what does that mean? That means when we factor this, that tells us that this becomes x minus 2 squared. Okay? And again, that's because if we take a look at x squared minus 4x plus 4, and we wanted to factor that, well, a is 1 times 4, which is c, is 4. And then this is -4, which is the value of b. And we would say, what two numbers can we multiply to get +4? Then we add them together, it gets -4. Well, that's -2. Okay, and again, that's x minus 2 times x minus 2, which is the same thing as x minus 2 squared. Okay, so this is kind of what the result's going to be, but this is a perfect square trinomial, so you should be able to go straight to this result over here. So now we have it factored, which is why it's called completing the square, because now we created this perfect square. Now on the right side, we're going to write 14 plus 4, which is going to give us 18. Okay. Now step number 5, we're going to use the square root property. So we're going to take the square root of both sides. So we're going to take the square root of x minus 2 squared, and then that's going to equal plus or minus the square root of 18. Okay. So now in step number 6, we know that when we take the square root of x minus 2 squared, we're going to get x minus 2. Okay, and then plus or minus, well, we need to figure out how do we simplify the square root of 18. Now remember, the prime factorization of 18 is 2 times 9, and that's 3 times 3. So that gives us 2 times 3 squared. We're going to factor out this 3 squared, and then leave that times the square root of 2. Well, what do I have to square to get 3 squared? That's 3 times the square root of 2. So therefore, this is plus or minus 3 times the square root of 2. Now, in order to solve for x, we're going to add 2 to both sides, and we're going to make sure that it is in front of the plus or minus sign. So therefore, we're going to get x, which is equal to positive 2 plus or minus 3 times the square root of 2. And so therefore, we have our two solutions. We have 2 minus 3 times the square root of 2 and 2 plus 3 times the square root of 2. And again, if we leave it in a simplified version, then it would be 2 plus or minus 3 times the square root of 2.